With the recent Jungle Inferno update, Valve has nerfed the Ambassador. It now has a fall-off effect applied to its critical hit damage after a certain range. In this video, we will be taking a look at the circumstances leading up to this change, and also shedding some light onto how the new changes work. We've known since June 20th, 2017 that Valve would be making changes to the Ambassador, as it was included in a list of potential balance changes that the devs posted onto their blog for feedback. In this post, Valve stated that they felt the Ambassador was encroaching on the sniper's role, turning the spy into something they do not want him to be. There is truth to this reasoning because at a more competitive level, spy has become somewhat of a second sniper, with a lot of Highlander spies heavily favoring the Ambassador over any other form of combat, which is understandable given the spy class's diminished potential when facing more coordinated teams. Most of the time, it is much safer to find a good position and take crit pot shots while using the Dead Ringer than it is to gamble on a backstab. Before the update, a spy with theoretically perfect aim could land 102 damage headshots every 0.95 seconds from nearly any distance. This means that every class besides the heavy could be two-shot from anywhere, as long as the spy has a sightline to their head. It seems strong, but in practice the skill requirement for aiming sort of balances it out, but as the environment becomes more competitive, you can begin to see the potential problems that might arise. So, was there enough concern to change the weapon? In Valve's eyes, yes, and on October 20th, Valve nerfed the Ambassador. So, a quick recap on how the Ambassador works. The Ambassador deals critical hits on headshots, at the cost of a slower firing speed and 15% less damage than its stock counterpart, the revolver. The new update brought fall-off to the Ambassador's critical hits, which means as the distance between you and your target increases, critical damage will decrease. Besides headshot crits, this fall-off effect applies to all of the Ambassador's critical damage, even when boosted by the Kritzkrieg or boosted to gain mini-crits. In order to understand how this new fall-off effect applies to the Ambassador's critical hit damage, we must first look at how damage ramp-up and fall-off work in TF2. A weapon deals its base damage to an enemy when the distance is at 512 hammer units. As you approach your target, the damage you do increases. This is called damage ramp-up, and each weapon falls into a different category of ramp-up amount. Most weapons in TF2 have a maximum damage ramp-up of 150% at point-blank range, although some weapons do less, like the sticky bomb launchers and rocket launchers, and others do more, like the scatterguns. When you increase your distance from an enemy past 512 hammer units, your damage potential to that enemy begins to decrease. After 921.5 hammer units, your damage is nearly halved and will no longer decrease. This is called damage falloff and applies to almost all weapons, with some exceptions being most grenade launchers, sniper rifles, and flare guns. In normal circumstances, critical hit damage ignores both damage ramp-up and damage falloff, and instead deals a flat 300% damage at all ranges. Lastly, mini-crit damage deals 135% of the base damage. It ignores falloff just like critical hits, but unlike critical hits, ramp-up is still applied. So let's get back to the Ambassador. Following this model, the Ambassador's damage ramp-up and fall-off graph will look like this. The Ambassador's base damage is 34, and it has a standard ramp-up of 150%. Its maximum damage falloff is just above 50%, resulting in 18 damage. Lastly, its critical damage is 3 times its base damage, so it will be 102. So how did Valve incorporate fall-off damage into their critical hit system for the Ambassador? After some testing, I found the answer to be quite simple. The Ambassador's critical damage still ignores damage ramp-up, so from 0 to 512 units, headshot damage remains the same at 102 damage. But after 512 units, critical damage will decrease alongside its base damage. It still deals 3 times the amount of damage, but this 3 times is applied to the diminishing fall-off damage numbers instead. So at the maximum range of 921.5 units, a headshot will do 3 times 18 damage, or 54 damage. This effect applies to mini crit damage as well. Additionally, after 1200 units, there is a cutoff, and the Ambassador will no longer headshot, meaning it can only do a measly 18 damage, no different from a body shot. You can, however, at this range still be crit boosted and mini crit boosted. So, the Ambassador is no longer the mini sniper rifle it used to be. You can still do a lot of work with it if you can skillfully land headshots, but you are now severely limited in your damage output at longer ranges. In fact, after 1200 units, the stock revolver is now a better choice than the Ambassador. I do feel, however, that if a player can consistently land headshots at close range, the Ambassador can be a better choice, but other weapons are now beginning to shine in the wake of the Ambassador's nerf. The stock revolver is seeing a return as an all-around flexible weapon, which I personally am happy to see. The Enforcer is now a very good weapon for picking off snipers wearing the Razorback, which can sometimes be a requirement in Highlander play, since it can now two-shot non-overhealed light classes in the right conditions. The Diamondback can still deliver full crits at any range, but it requires the Spy to get backstabs and saps. I never really liked the design of the Diamondback, but funnily enough, I can sort of see why Valve designed it this way and didn't touch it in this update, despite having the same output capabilities as the old Ambassador. It requires the Spy to do more spy-like things, unlike the Ambassador, and because of this, I feel that Valve may leave it how it is, unfortunately, since this is what Valve wants to see out of the Spy. Here are some of the effective ranges of the Ambassador in the context of a map everyone's familiar with. Hopefully these examples can help you get a feel for where it might be most effective to use the Ambassador. Hey, thanks for watching! I want to ask, what are your thoughts on the new Ambassador? Do you feel like it's still useful under the right circumstances? I mean, I haven't been a spy main since like 2011. If you don't think it's still useful, what do you think could be adjusted about it? I'd like to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. I really appreciate the response and feedback on my previous videos. I definitely want to keep making these, and I have a whole lot of ideas that I think are fun and interesting that I want to cover in the future. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing, or share it with friends, or just, post it into the chat into your TF2 games. I'm sure someone will click that. Right? That's what I've been doing these past 10 years, and it's been working really well. If you like the music in my videos, you can go to soundcloud.com/vidboy or vidboy.bandcamp.com to hear more. And again, thank you for watching.